are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop Podcast, episode 206 of the College Loop Podcast. I am Larck, boy Tank on Twitter, and we are here today to predict Auburn Football's 2024 stat leaders, ranging from everything from defensive touchdowns all the way up to passing yards. As the season gets so much closer and closer by the day, we are officially 97 days away from Auburn football in just a few months, August 31st. I don't know if the time has actually been announced yet, but I do presume a season opener for Auburn probably around the 6 o'clock mark, as I believe that's been the trend for most seasons thus far. Before we get into the stat leaders, do want to go ahead and shout out Perry Thompson and Malcolm Simmons. The last two of the Freeze Five are now on the Plains, officially where they will be, hopefully for 3 to 4 years for their Auburn career. But to go and get started, I think it's easy to start off with the passing yards and passing touchdowns. I have Peyton Thorne is going to be leading Auburn in passing, and no shocker there. He is going to be the starting quarterback for the Auburn Tigers in 2024. I don't really think that he really has competition for that this year. I think it was going to be him regardless of however it went. Of course, unless Holden Gerner or Hank Brown or even Walker White, for that matter, came up and started swinging right out of the gate. But yeah, Peyton Thorne is going to be the starting quarterback for the Auburn Tigers in 2024. Ultimately, I have predicted to get 2,200 passing yards as well as 20 touchdowns as well. That's pretty baseline. I think because if you go back to last year's stats, 1,700 yards passing and 16 touchdowns while sharing time at quarterback with Robbie Ashford. And as a team, 2,100 yards. So I think he does improve by the 500, especially with a completely revamped wide receiving core, as well as what looks to be more of a veteran laden offensive line. Ultimately, I think this is a better ultimately, that word coming back. I do think this is a better team for Peyton Thorne to really show off his strengths that he has. I don't think we're going to ever see an elite level of Peyton Thorne, but you're going to see an impressive improvement of Peyton Thorne going into this season. Because I know a lot of people kind of give Peyton Thorne a lot of crap for how last season went, but with the issues going on the sideline, just trying to get plays called the correct way and not having a really talented wide receiver room. I think you're finally going to see Peyton Thorne kind of return back to what we saw of him when he was at Michigan State with Coleman. And I'm honestly very excited to see what Peyton Thorne does in year 2. Rushing yards. Also another one that I don't think is going to be a very huge debate. War Eagle, Ernest. It's Jarquez Hunter. Jarquez has been the starting running back for the past 2 seasons now, or will be the second season. He's going to be sharing some of the load with Damari Alston and Jeremiah Cobb. Do not think that they are going to reach the yardage mark that I think Jarquez Hunter is going to get. Mainly the thing is, I think Jarquez Hunter is due for a 1,000-yard season. I think that it's kind of shocking to think about that Auburn has not had a 1,000-yard rusher in a very long time in Auburn years. Because if you go back to, I think 2018 was the last year Auburn didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher, or maybe the last one they did have a 1,000-yard rusher. It's been a minute since Auburn has been a contingent 1,000-yard rusher on their team. I was shocked to find out whenever Auburn had like a 10-year stretch where they always had a 1,000-yard rusher, and even had some seasons where they had 2. So I think Jarquez Hunter is finally going to hit that mark. I have him as 1,100 yards on the ground and having 10 touchdowns, leading the team with that as well. I think that right behind him is going to be Damari Alston, which I don't think is a shocker at all. But I think Damari is probably going to have around 600 maybe yards, 500 yards, and then have Jeremiah Cobb kind of follow suit with that, probably around 100 less than we see Damari. I think you're going to see a nice little trio of running backs as Richard comes in with another War Eagle Richard. And then, so yeah, Jarquez Hunter leading the team rushing yards wise and rushing touchdowns. Again, I think that you could see Damari Alston probably be second. I could honestly see a world where Jarquez Hunter leads the team in rushing yards, but not the team in rushing touchdowns. Because I do think that Damari Alston is going to be hungry trying to get those touchdowns up and really impress yet again, because Damari's been a very impressive running back since he's been on the Plains. And it's going to be fun to see how Jeremiah Cobb gets really implemented into the team now that he's the third string running back, which he was. And it is we're still waiting to hear any more news about Brian Battie. I know that his playing career is probably over, but I have not heard any other updates that have been positive about Brian Battie. So wishing him the best of luck and prayers for him and his family as they go through this tough time again. Will we throw the running backs more this year? I think we do. I'd like those wheel routes and screens more this year with Jeremiah Cobb. He is a really good receiving back. I also think he might share some time as a return man as well. So I do think Auburn does share some, just throws the running backs a lot more going into this year. So with that going on the receiving yards, getting to that question as well. Receiving yards, I think Cam Coleman is going to lead Auburn receiving yards in 2024. I think that with the talent that he has and the size that he possesses, he is going to be Auburn's main number one target. I don't think it's going to be much of a debate for that matter. So I think he's going to get a lot of passes thrown his way, which is going to lead to him leading the Auburn in receiving yards. And then moving on to receiving touchdowns, I don't think Cam Coleman leads the team in receiving yards. Or receiving touchdowns. I think it's going to be reserved for Valdo Fairweather. So that's going to be the first and only offensive stat category where I think that the same person will not be leading Auburn in both ones. I think Valdo kind of has the red zone target ability and the deadliness that he possesses to defenses in that, which is why Auburn threw him that fade route against Cal that won him the game this past year. I do think that Valdo is going to be a guy that they're going to be throwing to a lot more, giving Peyton Thorne another security blanket again. I mean, he's going to already have 9 wide receivers worth the call for being a security blanket. But I do think Valdo is going to really stand out in the SEC. I think we're going to talk about Valdo in a couple of years as one of the best tight ends that Auburn has probably seen, which is like a long list. I know that I think the number one would clearly be Philip Watson-Kirkin. Rest in peace to him as well. Who by far is probably one of my favorite Tigers I've ever watched play. Number 2 behind Philip, I'd probably put C.J. Uzomah. And then 3, I think you could argue Valdo right there as well because the season he had. What's up, Tim? And yeah, Richard again. Yeah, completely praying for Brian Battie. But so receiving touchdowns, Valdo Fairweather, I have him at 12. I think that's a pretty for an upgraded season. I guess that might be a little out of the ordinary considering I have Peyton Thorne with 20 touchdowns. I might bring that down to maybe 6 or 7. That might be a little out of the realm possibility for 12. So let me go and put that back down to 6. Because looking at last year for Valdo, he had 394 yards with 6 touchdowns again. I think he gets that again. I think he probably has the same kind of season he has, maybe more yards. But I do think that he's going to get targeted a lot more. I think you're going to be seeing a lot more Valdo in 2024, which is saying a lot because he saw a lot of them last year. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, I think you're going to see a lot of the same faces again, i.e. in leading tackles. Eugene Asante, I have leading Auburn in tackles again. He led them last year with 86. I still think he hits into the 80s again. Eugene Asante again just had one of a really breakout season last year and was really good for those defense that really needed a leader in the linebacker room, which it didn't really have until Eugene Asante stepped out after the Austin Keys injury, leaving Auburn kind of at a worse for wear in the linebacker room. And then Eugene Asante came up out of nowhere and just blew it out of the water. He was the best player on the team last year. I don't think that's much of an argument. So I think he's going to lead the team in tackles again, just because that's just the kind of player that Eugene is. I think he's going to be one of those linebackers you're going to be talking about in 2024 in the 2025 draft as a guy who the team's going to pick up and they're going to be excited they got him, no matter where it is. Even if it's like round 3, round 4, I don't think anyone's going to be wrong with getting Eugene Asante. I think he might even be a round 2, round 1 kind of conversation guy. Tackles for losses, TFLs. Last year, this was led by 2 defensive linemen, and Marcus Harris and Jalen McLeod. I do have no defensive lineman leading the charge here. It's not going to be Jalen McLeod. It's going to be Keldrick Falk. I really had to figure a way for Keldrick to really get in there. I don't think he's going to be the sack guy, but I do think he's going to be a TFL guy. So I'm very, very happy to see how he develops in the year 2. Keldrick was already, I think, 6th on a team last year and 7th on the team in tackles for loss. So that's what kind of a limited playing time. I don't think he started all the games, but he did play in all 13. Had a great season last year, 35 tackles. Also only had 1 sack on the year. Pass breakups, he had 1, and he had 2 quarterback hurries as well. I think you're going to see a step up because this is going to be Keldrick Falk that doesn't have to battle out for his position. He's going to be the starter day 1 in the 2024 season. So I think he's going to lead Auburn in tackles for loss. I think he's going to be a guy that Auburn's really going to have a lot of fun with, moving him around and seeing how he performs. And with the second defense line coach, this is going to be a second defense line coach in 2 seasons. So Vontrell King-Williams is going to be in charge of the development of Keldrick Falk. Now sacks. This one I think could have gone a lot of ways, but I'm going to go with the guy who was second on the team last year with Jalen McLeod. If Jalen McLeod can stay healthy, I think he could be a guy looking down the line that could lead or be like top 3 in the SEC in sacks. I have him predicted to get 10 sacks this year, which I mean isn't far off from what he got last year. It was far off, but 5.5 was what he got last year. But that's when he was dealing with injuries, didn't really get the starting job. And then of course Marcus Harris led the team in last year with 7. So I do think Jalen McLeod, a fully healthy Jalen McLeod, is the best edge rusher on this Auburn team, and I don't think that's much of an argument. So it's going to be very fun to see how he does with the job completely out of the gate. Injuries aside, if he just all 13 games, Jalen McLeod is going to be up there in the SEC in terms of sacks. And I will stand by that. And then going into interceptions, this is where I have I think this is the only position, the only stat I have on both sides that has anything to do with the transfer. I have Jaron Thompson coming in and leading Auburn in interceptions. I think that he's going to take over that Jalen Simpson role. I think the secondary that Crime Dog sets up is very good for that free safety position, which is what Jaron Thompson is going to be playing mostly. He's going to be the captain of the defense and the captain of the secondary, really, but captain of the defense in the backfield when it comes to throws deep. I think he is going to be the guy that is going to – I don't think it's going to be very hard to replicate the season that Jalen Simpson just had, because Jalen Simpson was all SEC, led the country interceptions for a couple of weeks. But I do think over the course of a season, he's going to have around 5 interceptions, which is a really good season, which I say really good, really great season. I do think that he's going to come up out of the gate. He already stood out a lot throughout the spring, was the MVP of the A-Day game. So I do think that Jaron Thompson is going to be the guy leading Auburn in interceptions. And my last category I have is defensive touchdowns. I have this as Keontae Scott. I think last year Auburn only really had 2 defensive touchdowns, I want to say. I think it was Jalen Simpson had a couple, and I think I forgot who all had them now that I'm trying to think of them. But Auburn had 1 pick six and 1 scoop and score, which of course was Eugene Asante and Jalen Simpson, who had those 2. I think Keontae Scott's going to get a couple. Or maybe just 1. It would lead the team, really. It led the team last year. So I think that Keontae Scott, just his athleticism, is going to make it hard for teams to catch up to him whenever he gets an open space like that. It's kind of like how last year with Jalen Simpson, I was able to say that he was going to lead the team in defensive touchdowns because of the fact that he kind of plays that wide receiver in the backfield role at the safety position. I think Keontae Scott's going to have that same capabilities that he wasn't able to have at the star position, which shockingly enough, I don't think Keontae Scott even had an interception last year for Auburn, which no, he did not, which is, again, shocking to me because of his his ball ability. I don't know, my ball hawking ability. There we go. Unable to watch the kind of play out like a wide receiver and watches them very well. And With that, that's kind of my predictions. I'll have a graphic kind of go up with all those predictions, but leave your predictions in the comments below, and I'll kind of react to them as they come along. But yeah, I am very excited for the season. I do think you're going to see a lot of new faces standing out, as in Cam Coleman, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Perry Thompson, who of course is now on campus again. Malcolm Simmons, I think, is going to come in, and if he has a good enough spring or good enough fall camp, he'll kind of step in early. And Bryce Kane as well. I think a couple of new guys that Auburn fans are getting really excited to see. Robert Lewis as well. I'm just naming off everybody now that Auburn picked up in the transfer portal. But could be one of the most talented wide receiver rooms Auburn has seen maybe ever. I know 04 with Sanders and Obamano and Aroma-Shadu. I think that kind of stands out a lot as well. But I do think that this 2024 team does have the most potential an Auburn wide receiver room has had maybe ever. Especially because you get in you get 2 5-stars and 2 high 4-stars in, and that's ultimately how that kind of goes. But yeah, so again, leave your predictions for Auburn stat leaders in the comments below, or tweet at us with them as well on all of our social media, and we'll see that. And if we like it, maybe we'll react to it. But with that, I'm going to go and move on to basketball. Before I get that, I want to let you know that if you are tuning in to the College Loop Live, thank you for tuning in. I see a couple of commenting as we speak. And of course, you're listening on podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And of course, you're watching this after it comes out live. Thank you for that as well. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, though. We're getting so close to 800 subscribers. And before we get into basketball, I'm just going to go ahead and play a little commercial for our merch that is out. Of course, it's on the warreport.com. It's going to be the Phil and Loopy t-shirt, and of course, the College Loop hat, which is now on sale on the warreport.com. So go check that out. And here is that commercial.
Are you tired of having to rummage through just clothes after clothes after clothes, looking for something to wear? Are you tired of your friends making fun of you for your terrible fashion sense? Well, do we have the shirt for you? Go to thewarreport.com, get your laptop out and do it right now. Go to the shop and get your very own Feelin' Loopy t-shirt as well as your College Loop hat, and you can get both of them for only $25 each. Plus shipping and handling, of course. But with that, now back to your regular scheduled program.
Auburn basketball has brought in yet another transfer in Georgia Tech guard Miles Kelly, who I believe has completely filled out Auburn's roster now. I think they were only looking for one more guard, and then they got it with a 6'6" combo guard to Miles Kelly, who averaged 13.9 points last year for the Yellow Jackets, 5.5 rebounds, and 1 assist, or about 2 assists, really. Shot about 37% from the field, and in his career, has shot 35% from the three-point line. Just a star-studded roster that we're seeing kind of get built through the portal. And I'm going to pull up this graphic while I'm talking because it's crazy to think about. Because if you look at Auburn's roster from top to bottom now, looking at go start off with some of the transfers. JP McGeese, who came in, is a senior. Denver Jones is a senior. Miles Kelly is a senior. Chad Baker-Mazar is a senior. Chris Moore, a senior. Chaney Johnson is a senior. Jaheim Hudson is a senior. Darren Scott is a senior. Dylan Cardwell is a senior. Janai Broom is a senior. And then now at the bottom, you got Tahad Pettiford and Ja'Kai Howard, who are both freshmen. So that, if my math does do me some service here, that is 10 seniors to only 2 freshmen. So going to be really a real make or break year this year for BP and company, because you have all your eggs in one old basket because you got a bunch of seniors on this team, which bodes well. I think this is going to be a roster that's going to be competing. I think that this is a roster that people will be looking at early as a top 5 team in the country. Auburn didn't really miss on any of their pickups. I mean, Jaheim Hudson, I think that what he adds as a big, it really helps. You're still going to see a lot of Chris Moore, I think, and I hope, because Chris Moore really earned his minutes as the season progressed last year for Auburn basketball. And then if you've gone further than that, I think that Darren Scott could get a couple more minutes. I think you're going to see a lot of new faces kind of come in and make impacts early. I think you're looking at Denver Jones probably starting off as the 1, and then you're going to have JP McGeese kind of come in as the 2 too. to him as well. And then you're going to have Miles Kelly come in, and there might be a trio of guards coming in and going out with Todd Pettiford as well. But retract everything I said. Todd Pettiford's going to be starting, I believe. JP McGee's, and then Denver Jones and Miles Kelly. You're going to be really rotating all those guys out. You're going to probably see Miles Kelly kind of come in for the 3 because he is 6'6" as a flies across my camera. But yeah, I'm very excited for this roster. It's kind of panned out. BP is going crazy in the portal next season. He's going to have to go even crazier in the portal now that Ja'Kai Howard and Todd Pettiford just have standout years. There's a good chance Auburn might be down to maybe like 3 roster spots that are filled going into the 2026 season, 2025-2026 season, which is crazy to think about. That's only a year away. But yeah, Miles Kelly, huge pickup, a guy who can shoot the lights out. He shot even better. I think he shot 40% in conference play last year in the ACC. I think I don't know if it was this year. I think that he was dealing with some injury issues, but he did play in all 32 games that he started all 32 games that he appeared in. Played 32 minutes last year. Doesn't have to deal with that this year. But you're getting a guy who can shoot the ball very well. Wish he did a little bit better from the free throw line. I mean, but as a career, he's done pretty well at 80%. Again, just BP doing BP things. Hopefully, it means the class of 2025 is going to be outrageously crazy. Hopefully, a lot of those guys are going to kind of buy into the fact, hey, Auburn's going to be down a lot of players. You'll start right away. So that's a little call out to all the recruits out there who are undecided. So Miles Kelly, I think, is going to be a huge addition. If I had to grade Auburn's transfer portal, and for basketball at least, I'd probably give it an A. I think an A kind of fits in. You looked at every guy that transferred out. You looked at Aiden Holloway, KD, and Trey, and you replaced those guys with JP and my mind's blanking, Miles and the last guard. I'm going to pull this up just so I can get it one more time. And Tahad. I don't know how I forgot about Tahad Pettiford. I'm trying to think about transfers. So that's my issue. Is I'm trying to think of transfers and not the high school guys coming in that are going to be lights out right away. I don't think Auburn really digressed at any position at left. Yeah, of course you're going to miss Jay Will a lot, but I do think that you're going to make that ground up with you're probably going to see a lot more Janai playing the 4 role alongside Chaney Johnson. You're going to have a lot more Dylan Cardwell this year, which I'm not going to be saying no to. I think Dylan Cardwell's impressed every single year, has improved every single year that he's been on the Plains, which I guess we're going into year 5 of Dylan Cardwell. So going into year 5, a lot of these guys as well. So yeah, Auburn lights out and from the transfer portal. Going to have to be even more heavy on in the transfer portal next year. So but that's only a year away. So we'll look past that for right now. And with that, we're going to move on to our last couple of things we got to touch on before we get out of here. And if y'all have any questions, don't be afraid to shoot them out at me and I will answer them. So starting off with baseball, going to go ahead and give our season grades for Auburn baseball this past year, which, oh boy, that was a tough season. Auburn finished, I believe, 14th in the SEC, maybe 13th in the SEC. I gave him a D-. I think that's pretty fair regarding the fact I'm not giving him an F. They did pretty well when the season ended, and they started off pretty well. But the middle of the season, the conference play, that was horrendous. You won 2 series, the last 2 in Missouri and Alabama, but the rest of them not one bit. Some of them you got swept. Some of you were just waiting till the last day to get the win. D- kind of where I'm sitting. If I had to kind of lay it out, I mean, a lot of it is coming down to the pitching. If I had to give one aspect of Auburn's game this past year an F, it's the pitching. It was horrendously bad. Even the coaches were talking about how it brought the team down. Kind of need to go into this off season kind of looking at other pitching coaches. And hopefully we'll get that Everett Tieford's gone tweet in a few weeks, hopefully. But yeah, the pitching this year for Auburn was just horrendously bad. So I think a D- is pretty fair. Softball, I kind of graded them maybe less harshly than baseball, but I gave them a B-. They went to a regional. They went to the last game of the regional, which lost in a very annoyingly embarrassing loss that just came down to 1 bad inning. I think the season overall wasn't like star-studded. Like there was not like a lot of huge key moments for the season, but there were a lot of solid wins that kind of came in very slowly. They earned that B. They earned a B. So I gave them a B minus. So that's kind of where I'm sitting at. Hopefully hearing more soon about who the who the head coach is going to be. I do know that Mickey Dean will be taking on a role in the athletic department. So I think he might be in on the hiring of Auburn's next softball coach. So I'm very excited to hear that's going to be. That's probably one of the coaching positions I'm most excited to hear about going into this athletic year. So yeah, right now softball to me stands at a B minus. That's strictly just because they made it to the offseason and had a lot of key wins. Last thing on my rundown is Auburn Golf, who currently stands as tied for 6th in round 3. Top 15 teams move on to round 4. Auburn currently standing at that 6th position. They have moved down 2 spots since yesterday. Had a bit of a sloppier day today than they have had. I'm still very confident how this team's going to finish out. I mean, even the fact that they're competing at this high of a level right now is very impressive to me. And of course, I'm not the best guy to talk to when it comes to talking about golf. But I can appreciate greatness whenever I see it. So, Jackson Coiven, hopefully you stay for, I guess, I don't know how PGA Tour works in golf, but Jackson Coiven is definitely going to be a guy that later on down the line, Auburn fans are going to be very excited to see, like, wear a jacket. Because he is absolutely ridiculous. He is just freaking crazy when it comes to golf, and it's going to be very exciting to see how his career kind of pans out after Auburn. But not right now at Auburn, I do see him winning a championship at least some point. If it's not this year, it will be at some point. Just because this golf team is awesome. So going to be a lot of fun to see how they kind of pan out. But with that kind of does my rundown. Again, if you have any questions, I'll try to stick around and ramble on for about 3 minutes, kind of stick to that 30-minute rule. So if you have any questions to ask about Auburn football, Auburn basketball, any of those sports that you want to ask me about, I am down to answer those before I have to get out of here. If not, I can go ahead and let everybody else enjoy the rest of their evening. So yeah, Auburn football, just trying to pull up their stats. I do think Auburn will not miss a lot of the guys from last year. I think that VAR has already been replaced. Jay Fair has already been kind of replaced by Bryce Kane. I think that kind of came into his transferring out. Caleb Burton's still going to have a role. Shane Hooks is not going to be missed as much. I think Auburn really improved a lot in the wide receiver room. I'm going to go back to my statement about Auburn being the best wide receiver. This could be one of the top wide receiver rooms in the country. I think that's a room that Auburn is going to be really excited to talk about, especially down the line. I don't want to say anything as heinous as Tar said last year, saying that the last year's running back room was going to be one of the best running back rooms college football's ever seen. I don't want to go anything crazy like that, but I do think the wide receiver room is going to be one of the top end Auburn wide receiver rooms ever. I think ever is kind of like the time span I'm kind of giving Auburn this wide receiver room right now. But since I'm not getting any questions, I'll go ahead and wrap up the show. I'm Dylan Larck at your boy Tank on Twitter. Of course, find me on Instagram as well at Dylan Larck at DYLNLRCK. If you have any questions, comments, or takes for Auburn football in 2024, if you tweet them at us or DM it to us, you might end up on the show. And of course, Theoretical Thursday. If you've not seen Theoretical Thursday from this past week, I talked about what would happen if Cam Newton decided he wanted to stay another year on the Plains for 2011, how Auburn's season would pan out then, going from 8-5 to potentially, I don't want to spoil what I said, but it was another national championship in my mind. And of course, you follow us right here on the College Loop on YouTube, and of course on Spotify Podcast, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music for the audio version of the show. And of course, if you're looking for us on social media, have us on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, the works, all those at the College Loop. And don't forget to turn on those post notifications so you can get reminded how many days are left between now and Auburn football season. So with all that being said, thanks for tuning in. And of course, this has been the College Loop Podcast. As I look for the outro, I never have this outro pulled up, but it has been the College Loop Podcast. Thanks for watching.